Johannesburg a day after the African National Congress ordered him to step down as South Africa's leader, President Jacob Zuma remained defiantly silent on Wednesday, prolonging a crisis in the country and inside Africa's oldest and most storied liberation party. A.N.C. Leaders increased the pressure on Mr. Zuma by announcing that if the president did not resign, they would try to remove him through a vote of no confidence in parliament as early as Thursday. It is the latest in a series of extraordinary moments for the party, which has shielded the president for nearly 9 years through a series of scandals and corruption charges. The ball is in his court, Paul Mashatile, the party's treasurer general, said at a news conference on Wednesday. A few hours earlier, Mr. Zuma came under pressure to resign on a new front, as the police raided the residence in Johannesburg of the Guptas, a family with wide-ranging business interests and close ties to one of the president's sons and his political allies. Local news outlets reported that 3 people, including a member of the family, had been arrested as part of a new police inquiry into influence peddling. On Wednesday morning, journalists started gathering in Pretoria, the seat of the government, expecting that Mr. Zuma was going to address the nation at 10 a.m. But less than an hour before the address was slated to start, his office issued a statement saying that no briefing had been scheduled. According to officials who have spoken with Mr. Zuma in the past week, he has defied pressure to step down because he believes that he has done nothing wrong and that he still has enough support within the party. Political experts have also pointed out that by vacating the presidency, Mr. Zuma would make himself vulnerable to pending inquiries and corruption charges that he has been able to deflect as the sitting president. The developments, as well as conflicting messages from leaders of the ANC, deepened the uncertainty surrounding Mr. Zuma's future and the paralysis over South Africa's governing party and government. It further complicated efforts by Mr. Zuma's presumed successor, Cyril Ramaphosa, the deputy president, to achieve a smooth transfer of power that would avoid widening fissures inside the party. At the same time, the events of the previous 24 hours were a clear sign of how much has changed in the 2 months since Mr. Ramaphosa was chosen to succeed Mr. Zuma as the leader of the ANC, creating what South Africans refer to as the 2 centers of power. Mr. Zuma, seemingly untouchable just a couple of months ago, is now almost certain to lose the presidency, either through a resignation or through a vote in parliament. The police's investigative unit, which has long been subject to political interference, is now investigating the Guptas, a powerful family who appeared to operate above the law under Mr. Zuma's protection. Analysts said it was no coincidence that heavily armed police officers had raided the Guptas' luxury compound and carried out arrests even as Mr. Zuma appeared to dither over whether to address the nation. The intended message, they said, was that those closest to Mr. Zuma, or even Mr. Zuma himself, could be next unless he acceded to the party's order to quit, well before his term as president was scheduled to expire in mid-2019. Ace Magashule, the party's secretary-general, said that Mr. Zuma has been given no deadline but was sure to reply by Wednesday, but the party was clearly divided over how forcefully to push the president to the exit. Mr. Magashule, a longtime ally of the president, said that the party was not preparing a motion of no confidence against him in parliament if he refused to resign. But other high-ranking officials issued stronger warnings, with Gwede Mantashe, the party's chairman and an ally of Mr. Ramaphosa, said that Mr. Zuma had been given the chance to resign on his own. Once you resist, we are going to let you be thrown out through the vote of no confidence, because you disrespect the organization and you disobey it, Mr. Mantashe said. Therefore we are going to let you be devoured by the vultures. Around noon on Wednesday, as Mr. Zuma remained silent, ANC officials held a news conference announcing plans for the no-confidence motion. They said they would work with an opposition party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, which had already pushed for a no-confidence vote in Parliament. The A.N.C's difficult position was on clear display on Tuesday. At a news conference at its headquarters in Johannesburg, Mr. Magashule, who is third in the party's hierarchy and who has traditionally acted as its spokesman, struggled to explain why the party was asking for Mr. Zuma's resignation. Mr. Magashule said that the ethical challenges that the president was facing had played no role, saying, "We did not take these decisions because Comrade Jacob Zuma has done anything wrong." Mr. Magashule's remarks suggested the party might be reluctant to deal head-on with the culture of corruption that was endemic under Mr. Zuma. The reason he gave for the party's move was that Mr. Zuma's continued presence as the nation's leader would erode the renewed hope and confidence among South Africans since party elections in December, in which Mr. Ramaphosa defeated Mr. Zuma's preferred candidate for the leadership of the A.N.C.Mr. Magashule indicated that Mr. Zuma was hurting the party's electoral prospects, a point that Mr. Ramaphosa's allies had emphasized. In the 2016 local elections, the ANC lost control over the nation's biggest cities after it was deserted by traditional supporters disillusioned by Mr. Zuma's conduct. Some party officials have since warned that it might face a similar fate in national elections in 2019.